Hello, everybody. My name is Jim Farmer. I am the festival director of Ballad Film at London's LGBTQ Film Festival. This is our 38th year, and we have an amazing lineup this year. One of my favorite films in our festival is Sally, and we're going to have a discussion with the director and co-producer Deborah Craig. But let me first read a brief description of the film. Sally brings into focus the life and legacy of Sally Gearhart, a charismatic lesbian feminist, activist, professor, and fantasy author. A trailblazer in the 1970s and 1980s lesbian feminist movement, Sally is a hidden figure deserving more attention. She was a key spokesman for an important period of women's history and a nationally known gay rights activist. Please welcome director and co-producer Deborah Craig.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy that we're showing this film. I cannot wait to share this with our audience. I mean, I adore this documentary. But so I guess what made you want to make this?
Well, I met Sally by happenstance. I was
Okay.
working on a short film on lesbians and aging, and as I was working on that project, I have a background in public health. I was working on a study of lesbian health and started to do a short film about lesbians and aging. And somebody who was also working on the study said, "Oh my God, you should meet this friend of mine. She lives in Northern California on women's land, and she's in her 80s and she still cuts her firewood with a chainsaw." And I just thought, I really want to meet this person. I didn't hear, I didn't know at the beginning that her name was Sally. I didn't know her name was Sally Gearhart. I didn't know she had worked with Harvey Milk. I didn't know she had been in the classic film, Word Is Out, that normalized gay life in the 70s. Oh, I just knew she was in her 80s. She was cutting her firewood with a chainsaw and living on women's land. And I thought, wow, I had heard about women's land, but I didn't know there was still women's land. So that really grabbed my interest. And I've just had a visual in my head that I wanted to see that. So I did meet her. I did include her in that short film called A Great Ride. And my editor, the woman who a brilliant editor, Ondine Rary, who I ended up using for A Great Ride. She and my friend and her old friend York Fogley, also one of our co-producers, were like, just ditch this film. Let's do a film about Sally. Her presence kind of leaps off the screen, leaps off the stage. She's just always ready for adventure and always so animated and charismatic and charming. So I was very dedicated to the idea of making the short. And then as soon as we finished the short, we just, without even a break, just jumped right in to make the film about Sally. I think by that time I had a better idea of her historical importance,
Mhm.
that I also just had a stronger sense of this is somebody who really can grab people's attention and is such a fascinating person for a variety, so just a huge variety of reasons.
Exactly. When you think of Sally, you think of her activism and being out for so long, but for a while she was in the closet. Really, it was only when she moved to San Francisco that she was able to. But can you sort of talk about that?
Yeah, so people, when we started telling people we were making the film, we usually got one of two reactions. Either, "Who is Sally Gearhart? I have no idea," or two, "Oh my God, Sally Gearhart, she's my hero or heroine. She was so important in the 70s and the 80s, and she did X, Y, and Z." So I think that but a lot of the people, even who knew her, didn't really know her backstory. And the more I knew, the more I ended up feeling that that was so important. Sally didn't come out. And that's another reason I'm so happy to bring the film to the South.
Yeah.
And place in the South, it feels so relevant. Sally grew up in a small town in Virginia. She went to Sweetbriar College in Virginia. Until the end of her life, she totally identified as a Southerner and had those deep Southern roots and kind of that Southern charm and her beautiful voice and everything. But she didn't come out until she was 40
Wow.
because she was deeply, deeply in the closet in Virginia, and then she taught in Texas for many, many years at Christian colleges. So I wanted people to know, A, that her Southern upbringing explained some key things about her personality, her, I hope it doesn't sound like a stereotype, but her warmth, her charisma, her storytelling ability. But it also explains some things like her, she grew up in the church. She was incredibly devout at certain points in time, very familiar with the Bible. And that helped her in her activism. So I thought for so many reasons, people should learn more, not just about Sally the activist and Sally the women's studies professor and Sally the radical lesbian separatist, but Sally the Southerner,
Right.
Sally the closeted lesbian, Sally the, teacher at Christian colleges in the South.
How hard was it for Sally to get started in activism?
Sally was, I mean, I think Sally was a natural.
Hmm.
She had grown up, she grew up with her grandmother. She grew up in the time of Shirley Temple, where she and some of her friends of her age would talk about they all wanted to grow up to be Shirley Temple. So she kind of, and she studied theater and communications. And so she really was a natural performer. It's just that she was not out until she moved to California. She actually moved to California to be able to come out.
Okay.
And so she moved to California and she came out as a lesbian, but she also came out as a feminist and came out as a political person so it's almost like some kind of a rebirth when she moved to San Francisco in her early 40s. And then as soon as she got here, she just leapt right in and was very, very involved with the creation of the Women's Studies Department at San Francisco State. Later in the 70s, involved fighting the Briggs Initiative with Harvey Milk. That was an anti-gay initiative, but also involved with some gay religious groups, the Council on Religion and the Homosexual. So she just sort of leapt, she came out with a bang and just leapt right in and was very, very involved in a variety of ways in activism and both for women's rights and for gay rights in San Francisco. She was such a natural sort of spokesperson. And she said such a gift for public speaking that I think she just found a way to fit herself right in.
When you think about all that Sally was involved with over the decades, including the Briggs Initiative, all the work with Harvey Milk, just such activism, but still, as you mentioned earlier, Sally isn't as well known as she should be. Why is that?
It's so that is one of the reasons, among others, that we wanted to make this film, is we felt very strongly that Sally deserved the recognition that she had not received. And one key point is that she, and not just her, but quite a few other women were omitted from the Hollywood film about Harvey Milk, the Milk film. But it is complicated. And Sally is always, everything about Sally is not simple, and we tried not to oversimplify. So when we were making the film, we were like, mad, she was omitted, this is not right. And we talked to a lot of lesbians who were really, really angry and upset about that. But the more we dug into it, the more we realized it's not so simple. She was left out. She should not have been left out. However, she was included in the documentary about Harvey Milk, the Rob Epstein documentary about Harvey Milk made in the 80s. Brilliant classic documentary. And Sally's interviewed. She has an amazing interview in
Yeah.
that film. Sally, like I said before, is in the Word Is Out film, and that was a groundbreaking film that normalized gay life. And so Sally wasn't totally omitted. She was just omitted from the Hollywood version. The other thing to realize is that 2008, Sally retired. She backed off of activism after the Briggs initiative and after Harvey's murder because she was, I wouldn't quite say an accidental activist because she was a natural activist and a very effective activist, but her profession was, she was a professor at San Francisco State University. I mean, she taught in Texas for about 15 years, came to San Francisco, taught at a number of colleges, and ended up at San Francisco State for many, many years. So that was almost like her main gig. And she retired early. So she retired in about 1991 and moved up, or 1990 or 1991, moved up to Northern California um, in the very early 90s. So she was long gone by the time they made the milk film. So not to excuse her omission, but I think it was she was erased. She also removed herself from the spotlight for a variety of reasons. And she was living in a women's land community in a little town, and she was very happy and comfortable there. She had this whole lesbian community. She knew many, many people in the town. In some ways, it was just a sort of a different version of the little Virginia town she grew up in, where she knew everybody, everybody knew her, and she was comfortable with everybody. And so again, it's complicated. She should not have been left out. It's wrong that she was left out. And there are a variety of reasons that she was left out. And so we were trying to make a film that put her back into the story without just pointing fingers, but trying to say there are a variety of reasons. I mean, queer people are left out all the time. Women are left out all the time. And so it's one more example of that. Again, not to excuse it, but just to try to put it in perspective.
I believe this film premiered at Frameline in 2024. And
That's correct.
you know,
Yeah.
a year and a half later, it's still doing the festival circuit. It's still out there trucking around. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
But once you were finished with your festival run, where do you see this film landing? So other people can get a chance to see this.
Yeah, so we feel so lucky. Just to even be able to finish the film. Anybody who's a filmmaker or in the arts knows it's hard under any circumstances to raise money, to get things done. We're not famous filmmakers. This is my first feature. We experienced COVID. And so we feel very, very grateful to have gotten the film done, to have premiered at Frameline and been in other festivals. We also feel very, very lucky to have a distributor, Women Make Movies, who's a top-notch, wonderful distributor. And so we're not just doing festivals, but I've been going to a few conferences. I think our next step is to really try to get the film out in an educational context. And I don't have a date, but I am quite confident that the film will be streaming as soon as we wind down our festival one. The film should be available streaming for individuals. So right now, if you go to our distributor site, if you're a college or university, you can purchase it. But always reach out. If you just look up Sally Gearhart
Yeah.
film, you can find us there. And if you reach out and you haven't been able to see it and you wanted to come to your area, we've done festivals, but we've also done screenings, large and small,
Oh, great.
at at LGBT centers and community centers and retirement centers and things like that. So we're doing. I again, it's my first feature. I thought, yeah, we worked very hard for 6 years, crossed the finish line, exhausted, and then I realized, oh, we're not done. We still have a lot of work to do to get it out in the world. But we've been very, very, very happy. And especially pleased that the film participants
Yeah.
um, have been happy with the results and so pleased with the film and with the films getting out there in the world.
That's great. Okay. As we wrap up, one final question. Just
Yeah.
just talk to me a little bit about Sally's legacy.
I think that Sally's legacy is key right now. So we made the film partly to preserve her legacy from the 70s and the 80s, where she was prime. That was the main period where everything was happening. It was very concentrated period in time in the 70s where she was very active and a lot was happening. And we wanted to make sure she got credit for that, starting, working with Harvey Milk, co-founding one of the first ever women's studies departments in the country, writing The Wander Ground, which was a very influential queer fantasy novel. But the more we worked on the film and the more politics has been just in turmoil in this country now with a pushback against women's rights and
Yeah.
trans rights and queer rights and immigrants' rights, we felt as though her message and a particular form of activism is extremely relevant right at this moment. Sally was so radical. She was so brave. She would just get up there and was not afraid to say what she wanted to say, no matter how outrageous. But she also, um, maybe I'm romanticizing it. I believe that no matter how radical she was, it was in a spirit
Mhm.
of curiosity, and of friendship and love. And so she didn't hate people that she disagreed with. She was just very adamant about what she believed. And she really, really believed it. And we tried to show that in the last third of the film, is that she was able to connect with people across differences. So she had Republican friends, men friends, gay men friends, straight men friends, straight women friends. And we need to take that message to heart, to fight really hard for our rights, but without hating people we disagree with, and to try to be in conversation with people that we disagree with. Otherwise, we're really, really in trouble. And I think that's one of the key problems that we're facing today.
That's great. Thank you so much. All right. Sally screens at Out on Film September the 27th at 4 o'clock at the Midtown Art Cinema. Deborah Craig, the director and co-producer, thank you so much for talking to us today. And thank you so much for sharing this film. I cannot wait for audiences to see this and really discover more about who Sally is.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thanks for having the film.
It was great talking to you. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care. Take care, Joe.